Back in 2021, I was renting the upstairs unit of a duplex in a suburb outside Columbus while finishing my last semester of college online. The downstairs unit was occupied by this older couple who mostly kept to themselves, and the neighborhood itself was quiet in the most normal way possible. Kids rode bikes around during the day, people walked dogs after dinner, and by 10 at night the entire street usually looked dead. I spent most evenings alone because my girlfriend at the time worked late shifts at a hospital about 30 minutes away, so I got used to being by myself without really thinking much about it. The weird stuff started with a guy asking for directions. It was around 7:30 one evening in early October. I had just gotten out of the shower when somebody knocked on my front door downstairs. Since package deliveries usually got left on the porch, I figured it was probably a neighbor. When I opened the door, there was a guy standing there in a gray hoodie holding his phone. He looked maybe late 20s, clean cut, pretty average looking. He asked if I knew where Maple Court was because his GPS kept rerouting him. I told him it was about 2 streets over. He thanked me, apologized for bothering me, and left. The whole interaction lasted maybe 30 seconds. The only thing I remember thinking afterward was that it was odd he walked there instead of driving, because he didn't have a car anywhere nearby. The next night, he came back. This time it was later, closer to 9. He knocked twice, and when I answered, he acted like he recognized me immediately and laughed awkwardly. He said his phone died while delivering food orders and asked if he could use my charger for a minute. I told him I didn't really feel comfortable letting strangers inside. He smiled and said he understood, but while he was talking, I noticed his eyes drifting past me into the apartment, not in a casual way either. He kept looking over my shoulder like he was trying to see how far back the hallway went. I ended up shutting the door pretty quickly after that. About 10 minutes later, I looked through my living room blinds and saw him standing near the sidewalk across the street, staring at the duplex. He wasn't on his phone anymore. He was just standing there. Eventually, he walked off toward the corner. That was the first time I felt genuinely uneasy. I told my girlfriend about it over FaceTime later that night, and she agreed it sounded weird, but we both kind of brushed it off. People act strange sometimes. 2 nights later, I came home from grabbing takeout and noticed a folded piece of paper tucked into the front door handle downstairs. At first, I thought it was an ad or something, but when I opened it, it was blank except for one sentence written in blue pen. "You should really lock your back windows." I honestly felt my stomach drop reading that. I immediately checked the upstairs windows and sliding door. Everything was locked. I even walked around outside with my phone flashlight, checking the side yard and the alley behind the duplex. Nothing seemed disturbed. I showed the note to the older couple downstairs, and the husband thought maybe it was some dumb prank. His wife didn't think it was funny at all. She asked if I had problems with anyone recently. I hadn't. The next evening, I was gaming with friends online around 11 when I heard footsteps outside on the small back staircase leading up to my unit. At first, I assumed it was the downstairs neighbor taking trash out or something, but then the footsteps stopped right outside my kitchen door. I muted my headset and listened. There was this faint rattling noise like somebody lightly touching the doorknob, then silence. I walked over quietly and looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. But when I looked down over the railing into the backyard, I caught movement near the fence. Somebody in a gray hoodie walking away quickly toward the alley. I called out, "Hey!" mostly out of instinct, and the person immediately broke into a run. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I noticed muddy shoe prints on the stairs leading up to my apartment. What really bothered me was that it hadn't rained in 2 days. Those prints were fresh from somewhere else. I bought one of those cheap motion detection cameras online and mounted it near the kitchen door. For about 4 days, nothing happened. I started feeling stupid for getting so worked up over it. Then one Saturday afternoon, my girlfriend came over after work and asked me who the guy outside was. I looked out the window and saw the same hoodie guy standing across the street near a parked SUV. He wasn't looking at the house directly this time. He was pretending to scroll on his phone. The second he noticed us at the window, he got into the SUV and drove away. I actually ran outside trying to get the plate number, but I only caught the first 3 characters before he turned the corner. My girlfriend wanted me to call the police right then, but honestly, I felt embarrassed because technically, The guy hadn't done anything criminal yet. He was just showing up places. That changed 2 nights later. Around 1:15 inches the morning, the motion alert from the camera woke me up. I checked the live feed on my phone and immediately saw somebody standing outside the kitchen door. Gray hoodie. Same guy. He wasn't knocking. He was just standing there, completely still. I remember my chest tightening because it felt so deliberate. Like he knew exactly how creepy it looked. Then he leaned forward and put his face close to the glass window beside the door, trying to look inside. I called 911 immediately, while staying completely quiet in my bedroom. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, the guy suddenly pulled something out of his pocket and started messing with the doorknob. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way and asked if I could stay hidden. I could hear the metal rattling through the apartment now. Then came this horrible scraping sound against the door frame. He was trying to pry it open. At one point he stopped, and I thought maybe he'd left. But then I heard footsteps moving along the side of the apartment toward the bedroom windows. I remember crouching beside my bed with my phone in one hand and a baseball bat in the other, listening to somebody slowly testing each window screen from outside. The dispatcher kept talking to me, trying to keep me calm, but I barely answered because I was focused on the sounds. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Complete silence. About 3 minutes later, police arrived. They searched the area, but couldn't find him. What they did find were pry marks near the kitchen door and one of my bedroom window screens, partially removed. One officer told me it looked like whoever it was had probably been watching the apartment for a while. That part stuck with me more than anything else. The idea that this random guy might have been observing my routine without me realizing it made me feel sick. After that, I stayed with my girlfriend for a few days. While I was there, the downstairs neighbor called me one afternoon, asking if I had hired someone to inspect the property. I said no. She told me a man had been walking around the backyard earlier looking at the windows and side entrance. She described the gray hoodie immediately without me even asking. This time, though, she got a partial plate from the SUV. Police traced it to a rental company, but apparently the information used to rent it was fake. A week later, things got even worse. My girlfriend and I were eating dinner at her apartment when I got a notification from the camera app again. Someone was at my back door. I opened the live feed expecting to see the same guy, but instead there were 2 men this time. One was the hoodie guy. The other one was older and heavier, wearing a dark jacket and gloves. They both stood outside the kitchen door talking quietly for a few seconds before the older guy pulled out a crowbar. I called 911 again while watching them on the feed. The older guy wedged the crowbar into the frame, while the hoodie guy kept looking around nervously. They were literally seconds away from forcing the door open when headlights turned into the alley behind the duplex. Both men ran instantly. It ended up being a patrol car responding to the call. Police searched the area again but didn't catch them that night. About 2 weeks later, though, they finally arrested the hoodie guy after a homeowner in another neighborhood came back early from vacation and found him inside the garage. The police later connected him and the older man to several break-ins around the county. Apparently, their whole method involved scouting smaller residential properties where people lived alone. The hoodie guy would make casual contact first to figure out schedules, whether cameras were visible, whether dogs were inside, stuff like that. If the person seemed isolated, they'd come back later. What still bothers me is realizing how normal he acted during that very first interaction. If he had never come back a second time, I probably would have forgotten him completely. Even now, years later, whenever somebody unexpected knocks at my door at night, I immediately look through a camera first. And every time I see someone standing outside wearing a gray hoodie, my brain instantly goes back to that kitchen door rattling in the middle of the night. This happened during my second year of college when I was still living at home with my mom and younger cousin in a townhouse complex outside Charlotte. My aunt had moved overseas for work a few months earlier, so my cousin Eli was staying with us until the school year ended. He was 14, quiet, and basically glued to his Xbox anytime he wasn't at school. My mom worked long shifts at a hospital, And I had mostly evening classes that semester, so a lot of nights it was just me and Eli at the house. Around early December, weird stuff started happening with our front porch decorations. At first, it was small things. One morning, I opened the door and found the fake snowman from our porch sitting in the middle of the walkway, facing the house. I figured neighborhood kids had messed with it. Our complex always had teenagers wandering around at night, especially during winter break. Then, 2 days later, our wreath disappeared. My mom thought somebody stole it, but later that night I found it hanging from the fence behind our backyard patio. What bothered me wasn't just that it had been moved, but that whoever did it had to open our backyard gate to get there. It felt more personal than random vandalism. After that, Eli started mentioning somebody knocking late at night. He said it happened around midnight when he stayed up gaming with headphones on. He'd hear 3 soft knocks on the front door, pause his game, look through the blinds, and never see anyone there. I honestly thought he was messing with me until I heard it myself. One Thursday night, I got home from class around 10:30. My mom was working overnight, and Eli was upstairs in his room. I was in the kitchen making ramen when I heard 3 knocks. Not loud, just calm and deliberate. I checked the peephole immediately. Nobody. I opened the door fast enough that if someone had run, I should have at least seen them crossing the parking lot. But the street outside was completely empty. What made it creepy was how still everything was. No voices, no footsteps, nothing. I locked the door and texted my mom about it as a joke, but it stayed in my head longer than I wanted to admit. Over the next week, it kept happening. Sometimes during the day, sometimes late at night. Always the same pattern. 3 knocks. Not aggressive, not playful either. Just enough to make you get up and check. My mom finally got annoyed enough that she called the HOA thinking kids were harassing houses again. Nobody else in the neighborhood reported anything similar. Around that same time, I noticed a dark SUV parked near the mailboxes several nights in a row. It wasn't directly in front of our place, but close enough that I noticed it when taking the trash out. The windows were tinted too dark to see inside. I remember one night standing there with a garbage bag in my hand, staring at that SUV while it idled with the headlights off. After maybe 10 seconds, it slowly pulled away without turning on the radio or anything. That gave me a bad feeling I couldn't really explain. A few days before Christmas break, Eli came downstairs looking genuinely nervous for once. He asked if I'd invited somebody over while he was in the shower. I said no. He told me he heard someone walking around downstairs about 20 minutes earlier. He assumed it was me getting home from class early, but then he realized he never heard the front door open or close. He said the footsteps stopped right outside the bathroom for a few seconds before walking away. I checked the whole house after he told me that and found nothing, but it got under my skin because he wasn't the kind of kid who made stuff up. Christmas week finally came, and my mom's schedule got even worse because half the hospital staff was out sick. On Christmas Eve, she left for another overnight shift around 8 p.m. Eli went upstairs to play games with his friends online, while I stayed downstairs wrapping presents at the dining room table. Around 11:15, there was another knock. Same exact pattern. 3 soft knocks. By then, I was irritated more than scared. I marched to the door and opened it immediately. Nobody there. But this time, I noticed something sitting on the doormat. It was one of Eli's school pictures. One of those wallet-sized photos they hand out every year. Somebody had folded it in half. I stared at it for a solid 10 seconds, trying to figure out how anyone got that picture. We'd only gotten those prints a week earlier. I called Eli downstairs and asked if he'd dropped one outside somewhere. The second he saw it, his face changed. He said all the extras were still in his desk drawer upstairs. We checked, and sure enough, one was missing. Neither of us really knew what to do after that. I locked every door again, shut all the blinds, and kept checking outside every few minutes. Eli stopped gaming completely and stayed downstairs near me. Around midnight, the power flickered once, then again maybe 30 seconds later. Our Wi-Fi cut out too. Eli joked that we were in a horror movie, but he sounded nervous saying it. Then we heard something from the backyard patio. Not knocking this time. The sound of somebody trying the sliding glass door, just a slow movement of the handle back and forth. Eli froze on the couch, staring at me. I grabbed the fireplace poker we kept near the TV and slowly walked toward the kitchen where the sliding door was. The blinds were closed, but I could hear breathing on the other side. Actual breathing. Heavy and uneven. Then, the handle stopped moving. Complete silence. I stood there for probably 20 seconds before suddenly hearing 3 knocks on the glass directly in front of my face. I jumped so hard I dropped the poker. Eli yelled from the living room asking what happened, and right after that, whoever was outside started laughing. Not loud, crazy laughter like in movies, more like quiet laughing to themselves. That scared me more than if they'd been screaming. I told Eli to go upstairs and lock himself in my mom's room while I called 911. While I was talking to dispatch, I heard footsteps running across the patio outside. Then silence again. The operator told me officers were on the way and asked if I could safely look outside to see where the person went. I peeked through the upstairs window in my mom's room and saw the dark SUV parked directly across from our townhouse with the engine running. The driver door was open, but I couldn't see anybody. Then Eli whispered, "Someone's downstairs." I still remember how cold I felt hearing that. We both listened carefully, and sure enough, there was movement below us. Slow footsteps. The stairs creaked once, then again. Somehow, while I was upstairs calling the police, whoever had been outside got inside the house. I realized immediately I'd forgotten to relock the front door after checking outside earlier. Eli started panicking, asking what we were supposed to do. I shoved the dresser partially in front of my mom's bedroom door while whispering to the dispatcher that someone was in the house. The footsteps kept moving downstairs for a while. Cabinets opening. The fridge door. Little sounds that made it feel even more real. Then everything stopped. A minute later, someone lightly tapped on the bedroom door. 3 knocks. I think that was the moment I got genuinely terrified, because whoever it was clearly knew we were in there. The dispatcher told me officers were almost there and to stay quiet. Then, the person outside the room spoke. It was a man's voice, calm and casual. He said, "I just want to talk for a minute." Neither of us answered. A few seconds later, he knocked again, harder this time. "I know the kid's in there," he said. "I just need to ask him something." Eli was shaking beside me at that point. I asked, through the door, who he was, and he immediately replied, "Tell Eli, I found his dog." The thing is, Eli's dog had died almost 3 years earlier, while he was living with my aunt in Texas. There was no possible way some random stranger should have known about that. Before I could even process it, the man started rattling the doorknob violently. Eli began crying while I held the dresser against the door with my full weight. Then suddenly, we heard sirens outside. The rattling stopped instantly. We heard footsteps sprinting downstairs, the front door slamming open, then tires screeching outside. Police arrived maybe 30 seconds later. They searched the house and surrounding parking lots, but couldn't find the driver. The SUV was gone before officers reached the complex entrance. The creepiest part came afterward. While checking downstairs, one of the officers found a small wrapped Christmas present sitting on our kitchen counter. None of us had seen it before. Inside was a framed photo taken through Eli's school cafeteria window. You could tell it was zoomed in from far away. He was sitting alone at a lunch table looking directly toward the camera without realizing it. Police investigated for weeks, but nothing ever came from it. They checked nearby security footage and found the SUV entering our neighborhood multiple nights before the break-in, usually staying for hours at a time. They never identified the driver. After that, my mom moved us into a different apartment across town before the semester started again. Eli eventually went back to live with his mom overseas. We never found out who the man was or how he knew things about our family. But even now, years later, I still hate hearing unexpected knocks at night, especially groups of 3.